With all of the controversy and seemingly narrow avoidance of an enormous economic disaster, the 2023 debt ceiling crisis has been all over the United States media recently. But is this coverage deserved? Did we really narrowly miss a huge economic downturn, or is it politicized fluff? Unsurprisingly, the answer is complicated. But first, what exactly is a debt ceiling? A debt ceiling or limit is a cap on how much money a country can borrow to finance its expenses, hence the name. Debt itself is important because financing the duties of a country is an exorbitant endeavor, and countries rarely, if ever, bring in enough revenue to finance their projects, thus the need to borrow money. As an example, the US Treasury issues bills, notes, and bonds to investors. The largest investments are made by other countries and prominent institutions, think China and Vanguard. These securities are particularly attractive because of their safety. The US has never defaulted on its debt. This consistency attracts many investors, and thus the US Treasury securities have high liquidity, the ability to trade and sell assets. The US isn't the only country with a debt ceiling, but it is unique in its political turmoil. Countries like Malaysia and Kenya have debt ceilings, but the limit is a percentage of their gross domestic product or market value of its goods and services. Plenty of other countries don't have a debt limit at all. Although Denmark does have a fixed limit, just like the United States, it is nominal because it is set so high and isn't caused with the political chaos that ensues in the United States. Wouldn't that be nice? Consequently, the primary focus of this video will be on the United States' debt ceiling. According to the US Treasury, the US debt limit is the total amount of money that the United States government is authorized to borrow to meet its existing legal obligations, including Social Security and Medicare benefits, military salaries, interest on the national debt, tax refunds, and other payments. Most notably, the debt ceiling does not authorize new spending. It simply allows the US to finance payments incurred in the past. In other words, the US has already spent the money, and the debt ceiling is the fulfillment of that cost. Instead, discretionary funding is allocated in an annual appropriations process between the President and Congress. Upon approaching the limit, the U.S. Congress must raise the debt ceiling or risk defaulting on its debt, which has never happened in the history of the United States. Now that we've established what a debt ceiling is, we can discuss what the just happened to the United States. The US hit the debt ceiling on January 19th, 2023, and the Treasury immediately began implementing, quote, extraordinary measures, end quote, such as the suspension of the reinvestment in government securities and the suspension of state and local government securities. These measures bought Congress more time to raise the debt ceiling, extending the deadline to early June. In typical American fashion, a host of bargaining, concessions, and begrudging agreements culminated in the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2023. This bill includes capping non-defense spending at $704 billion for fiscal year 2024 and rescinding $30 billion of unused pandemic relief funding, along with other adjustments such as changes to the qualifications for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, which replaced food stamps. These changes are predicted to lower the expected federal debt in 2033 from $46.7 trillion to $45.2 trillion, a 3% reduction. Notably, the bill passed the House 314 to 117 with 165 Democrats and 149 Republican votes in favor. The Senate followed suit 63 to 36 with 44 Democrats, 17 Republicans, and 2 independents voting yes. The majority Democrat votes in favor resulted in some disgruntled Republicans. The United States first established a cap on bonds of $11.5 billion in 1917, yes, that's billion with a B, and didn't implement a cap of $45 billion on all government debt until 1939. The debt ceiling has been edited 78 times since 1960, with 49 under Republican presidents and 29 under Democrats. Thus, raising the debt ceiling is a bipartisan effort and something that both parties view as necessary and vital to the success of the United States. Despite its necessity, however, the debt ceiling has always been controversial. In 2011, Obama signed a bill that raised the debt ceiling just 2 days before the expected deadline, managing to avoid a, quote, an unprecedented national default, according to a CNN article written in 2011. Doesn't that sound familiar? In fact, if you remove the dates and the names of the current president, you would have a hard time telling the difference between the articles in 2011 and 2023. Thus, the amount of apocalyptic press the debt ceiling garners leading up to its inevitable raise seems unnecessary. Sure, defaulting on its debt would be cataclysmic for the US and even global economy given how much capital is dependent on the US dollar, but it's that very reason that makes the default unlikely. As much as one party might try to leverage the debt ceiling for their own gain, it is in both parties' benefit to raise the debt ceiling, and consequently it is inevitable, despite how the US media might choose to frame the issue. Ultimately, the debt ceiling is a government threshold that realistically would only affect the average American or investor if the US were to default, which, as stated earlier, is highly unlikely. However, the debt ceiling is still an important function of the United States government and continues to be leveraged for political gain, which is a dangerous idea. To conditionalize the fulfillment of payments is a weird tactic. It's like if two of your friends owed you money and one of them only agreed to pay you if the other friend mowed their lawn. Budget cuts and decisions should instead be debated and authorized in the annual appropriations process. If you want to read more in depth about the US debt ceiling, which I highly recommend you do, I've linked a source document in the description. With that being said, this has been Informed Gamer, and thank you for watching.